The ground shook with each step the creature took. Commander Elena Voss watched through her cracked helmet visor as the massive alien lifted a boulder the size of a small house. Its single eye, burning like molten copper, focused on the ancient fortress where Squad had taken shelter. The Cyclonian warrior stood nearly 40 feet tall, its gray skin covered in battle scars from countless conflicts across the galaxy. Muscles rippled beneath that thick hide as it drew back its arm. Elena knew what was coming next. The boulder flew through the air with terrifying speed. It struck the eastern tower of the castle with a sound like thunder meeting earthquake. Stone and dust exploded outward. The tower that had stood for 3,000 years crumbled in seconds. Elena felt the vibration through her boots as debris rained down around her position. This planet had once belonged to an ancient civilization. They had built these castles and fortresses to protect themselves, but they were gone now. Only their empty buildings remained. And humanity had stumbled into a war they never expected when they came here looking for resources. The Cyclonians had claimed this world as their training ground. For generations, their young warriors had come here to practice siege warfare. They destroyed the old structures for sport. When human colonists arrived, the Cyclonians saw them as invaders. No amount of diplomacy had worked. The aliens wanted blood. Elena pulled her remaining soldiers deeper into the fortress. There were only 17 of them left from an original force of 200. Their weapons barely scratched the thick skin of these giants. Their vehicles had been crushed like toys. Their communications tower had been the first thing destroyed. No help was coming. Private Marcus Chun crawled up beside her. His face was covered in dust and dried blood from a cut above his eye. He was only 22 years old, too young to die on an alien world fighting monsters from nightmare stories. "Commander, we cannot hold this position," he said. His voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. "That thing will bring down the whole castle on our heads." Elena knew he was right, but running meant dying in the open. These creatures were fast, despite their size. She had watched one catch a fleeing soldier in 3 strides. The memory still haunted her. "We do not run," she said firmly. "We fight." That is what humans do. Another roar echoed across the battlefield. Elena looked out through a gap in the wall. The Cyclonian was searching for another boulder. 2 more of its kind were approaching from the northern hills. They carried weapons that looked like tree trunks sharpened to points. Sergeant Williams appeared at her side. The old soldier had fought in 3 different wars across human space. His gray hair was matted with sweat and grime, but his hands were steady on his plasma rifle. "Ma'am, I have been thinking," Williams said. "These creatures are strong, stronger than anything we have ever faced. But I noticed something. They are not smart fighters. They rely on power alone." Elena turned to face him fully. "Explain." Williams pointed toward the approaching giants. "Watch how they move. No formation, no coordination. Each one fights for personal glory. They do not work together. And that big one has been throwing rocks for an hour. It must be getting tired." Hope flickered in Elena's chest. It was small, but it was there. She had trained her entire career to find weakness in enemies. The Cyclonians seemed invincible, but nothing was truly invincible. "What are you suggesting, Sergeant?" Williams smiled grimly. "We cannot beat them in straight combat. But we are humans. We did not conquer 100 worlds by being stronger than everything we met. We won by being smarter." Elena gathered her remaining soldiers in the central hall of the fortress. Dust continued to fall from the ceiling as distant impacts shook the structure. Time was running out, but she refused to let these people die without a chance. "Listen carefully," she began. "We are outmatched in every physical way. These creatures could crush us with their bare hands. Our weapons do little damage. Our armor means nothing against their strength. By every reasonable measure, we should already be dead." The soldiers watched her with tired eyes. Some were wounded, all were exhausted, but none of them looked ready to surrender. However, we are not reasonable creatures, Elena continued. We are humans. Our ancestors faced animals bigger than them with nothing but sticks and stones. They won. Our grandparents crossed the void between stars when everyone said it was impossible. They succeeded. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that killed billions. We are still here. Private Chun straightened his shoulders. Color returned to his dusty face. Around the room, other soldiers began to stand taller. These Cycloneans think we are weak because we are small, Elena said. They think we will break because we bleed easily. But they do not understand what makes humans dangerous. It is not our bodies, it is our minds. It is our refusal to accept defeat. Sergeant Williams stepped forward with a crude map drawn in the dust on the floor. He pointed to different sections of the fortress. The structural supports here, and here are already weakened, he explained. If we can lure the big one inside and bring down the ceiling, we can trap it. Maybe kill it? The other two will still be out there, someone said from the back. Williams nodded. True, but they will see their champion fall to tiny humans. Fear is a weapon too. The plan was desperate. The chances of success were small, but it was better than waiting to be crushed. Elena looked at each soldier individually. These were her people, her responsibility. Anyone who wants to try escaping during the confusion can do so, she said. I will not judge you, but I am staying. I am going to show these monsters what humanity is made of. Not a single person moved toward the exit. The preparations took nearly an hour. Soldiers placed explosive charges at key support points. Others gathered debris to use as bait and distraction. Medical supplies were distributed to those who would need to move quickly. Elena positioned herself at the entrance to the Great Hall. She would be the bait. The Cyclonean had been focused on her since the battle began. It seemed to recognize her as the leader. Pride would bring it to her. When everything was ready, she stepped out into the open courtyard. The giant creature noticed her immediately. Its massive eye narrowed with what might have been recognition. It made a sound that could have been laughter. Elena raised her plasma rifle and fired. The shot struck the creature's chest and did nothing but leave a small burn mark. But it got the reaction she wanted. The Cyclonean roared with anger and charged toward her. The ground shook violently as it ran. Elena stood her ground until the last possible moment. Then she turned and sprinted into the fortress. The creature followed without hesitation. It wanted her blood. It wanted to crush the defiant little human who dared to challenge it. Inside, the Cyclonean had to crouch to fit through the ancient doorways. It destroyed walls as it moved, widening passages with its massive shoulders. Dust and stone filled the air. Elena coughed as she ran but did not stop. She led the monster deeper into the structure, past the prepared positions, past the hidden soldiers, into the heart of the weakened section. Now, she screamed. Explosions erupted from 3 different points. The ceiling above the Cyclonean cracked and then collapsed. Tons of ancient stone fell upon the creature. It roared in surprise and rage as it was buried. One massive arm reached out from the rubble, still grasping for Elena. She walked calmly to that hand. The creature was still alive, but trapped. Its single eye glared at her through a gap in the stones. There was no more pride there, only confusion. How had the tiny creatures defeated it? Elena knelt so the creature could see her clearly. You thought we were weak, she said quietly. You thought our small bodies meant small spirits. But humans are not measured by the size of our muscles. We are measured by the size of our will. And our will is infinite. The creature made a sound that might have been acknowledgement. Then the light faded from its eye. Outside, the 2 remaining Cycloneans had stopped their advance. They stared at the fortress where their champion had fallen. The impossible had happened. The tiny prey animals had killed the strongest of their hunting party. Sergeant Williams appeared beside Elena. Blood dripped from a cut on his arm, but he was smiling. They are not moving, Commander. I think they are scared. Elena watched the giants carefully. Cyclonian culture was based on strength. They had never encountered a species that could defeat strength with cunning. Their entire understanding of combat had just been shattered. Hold your positions, Elena ordered her soldiers. Let them look. Let them think. Fear spreads faster than any weapon. For long minutes, nothing happened. The Cyclonians stood frozen on the hills. Then slowly, almost hesitantly, they began to retreat. They gathered their fallen comrade's weapon, but did not approach the fortress again. Within an hour, they had disappeared over the horizon. Private Chun sat down heavily against a ruined wall. Did we just win? Elena allowed herself a small smile. We survived. That is the first step to winning. Days later, a rescue ship finally arrived. The communications blackout had lasted longer than expected, but humanity had not forgotten its people. When the soldiers told their story, it spread across human space within weeks. The tale of 17 humans defeating creatures 10 times their size became legend. Other Cyclonian hunting parties avoided human settlements after that. Word had spread among their kind. The small creatures were not weak. They were dangerous in ways that size could not measure. Elena was promoted and given command of a new defensive force. Her strategy became standard training for dealing with physically superior enemies. But she always remembered the lessons she learned on that distant world. Humanity had never been the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the toughest, but they possessed something no amount of muscle could match. They had the ability to think their way through any problem. They had the stubbornness to keep fighting when all hope seemed lost. They had hearts that refused to break. The Cyclonians eventually sent diplomats to human space. They wanted to understand the species they had once dismissed as prey. The peace that followed was uneasy but real. And somewhere in the ruins of an ancient fortress, a pile of stones marked the grave of a giant who learned the true meaning of strength. It was not about how much you could lift or how hard you could hit. True strength was about standing up when everything told you to fall down. And in that measure, humans had no equal in all the stars.